Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining today. I'd like to officially welcome you to today's webinar, Information and Knowledge Context on the Go. My name is Matt Caton, and I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Jay Ofemi.
How's it going, guys? Glad to be part of the meeting today and hope to cover some really helpful tips in using the brain today. And hope everyone's staying, safe with all the craziness going on outside. Glad to be a part of the meeting today and hope to cover some good stuff.
Great, thank you. And yes, we do have some really helpful tips and maybe even some unknown tips available to you on how you can use your digital brain for information management when you're in a hurry. That's the specific sort of topic or theme that we'll be covering today. Information on the go. You're away from your keyboard, you're away from your typical desktop and just have your laptop or your iPad or Android phone with you on the road. You find some information that's important to you. How can you capture it? Or even you're sitting at your desktop, but again, you're in a rush. You see a web page, you've got a document. You need to get this information into the brain. What are some basic features of the brain application that you can use to quickly capture that information and then easily return to it at a later date? So let's go ahead and get started. We're jumping into today's topic assuming that you do know a little bit about the brain. If you're just getting started with your brain, with the digital brain, the brain application, please visit our website and you can sign up for a Brain 101 class that happens every Friday where we cover really the basics. Pieces of information are called thoughts. Thoughts can be connected to notes, file attachments, web content, and there's relationship statuses to thoughts within your brain. In other words, any thought that I click on, it becomes the current active thought. And all related information is displayed around. Parent thoughts up above and child thoughts down below. So a bit of a linear structure: parent thoughts, active thought, child thought down below. And we have our jump thoughts that are related to pieces of information. That really differentiates the brain from a typical file and folder type of structure and gives you a lot of options as far as how you can construct and navigate a brain on any particular topic. Now, today's focus is all about capturing information and getting it into your brain quickly. So the very first thing that I want to talk with you about are the brain notes. The notes are a great way to quickly capture a bit of data. Whether you just see something on the web and you like, you can copy and paste it right into the note of any thought. Any thought that you create in your brain will automatically have a notes tab associated with it. So I chose to start off today on my weekend checklist. My weekend checklist is a very commonly visited thought in my own personal brain, and it's where I put all of just the notes or projects that I'm going to be working on. So let's say, just for example, I'm going to be changing the tires on my car, just a random idea. I'm going to click and drag off of the gate to create a new child thought. This is how I like to create new thoughts in the brain. There are many different ways to create new thoughts. We'll be covering some more today, but I can click and drag off the gate. So change tires on the Honda. So I've created a thought for this project or activity that I'm going to be doing. And if I need to keep track of what size tires do I have, or what should the tire pressure be, or what type of wrench could I use? Just a basic couple of ideas. Tires need to be all terrain, and wrench size is 1 inch. Now, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but you can see I can quickly add some data here into the notes area of the brain. The notes in the brain are based on Markdown for their formatting. If you're not familiar with Markdown, don't worry about it. You can use any of the buttons up above to quickly sort of format any text that you're adding. If I just really want to bring my attention to something, I can select it, make it bold, or select something, make it italic. But notice I can type in place. So if I say a new item on this particular list, be sure to, whoops, as you can see, my spell check is turned on too. Be sure to use jack stand. So notice two asterisks. So if you know a little bit about Markdown, you can use that Markdown formatting in place as you're typing in your note. There I just added a couple of asterisks and made that text bold. If you want to know more about the Brain's Markdown functionality or capabilities, it's a little question mark icon. Simply click on that question mark, and that is going to open up sort of the Brain's cheat sheet for Markdown. So you can really quickly and easily modify. Now that opened up on another monitor. There it is. That opened up all of the Markdown settings available to you in the notes of the Brain. Now we can also add text and content into the Brain from documents, files, web pages, emails. So really quickly, let me just share with you that I can drag and drop it right into the Brain. So this is pretty straightforward. If you are familiar with the Brain, you know that you can grab a file that you like and simply drag and drop. Now, this particular file that I'm about to drag and drop has to do with my 2020 fishing license. If I were to just drag and drop this into the Brain, I'd be placing it in the wrong area. My 2020 fishing license has nothing to do with my weekend activity of changing the tires. So I need to get to a different area of my Brain. So I click and I do a quick search for fishing license. Here are all the thoughts that reference fishing license. So I don't need to navigate from thought to thought. This is a very large Brain, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 thoughts. So to find where I put my fishing license in my Brain, I do know where it is, but to jump back out of my weekend activities and into hobbies and interests, I've got them divided between land and water, and I would go into water and eventually find the area where I keep track of my fishing license. Here's the thought that I've already created for my current fishing license. I just recently purchased it. It hasn't been added yet into my Brain. It falls under recreation fishing, and I even keep track of all of my old fishing licenses. I don't know why, I just do. I keep those in my Brain in case I ever need to reference them for any reason. But regardless, I found the thought where I want to add my current fishing license. There's actually 2 documents, a receipt and the license itself, and I can simply click and drag that right to the Brain. So let's save some time. To add this thought, this document that I needed to get into my Brain, I was forced to navigate in the correct Brain to the correct area and then do my drag and drop to drop that in. But I'm in a hurry. I'm on my way to a meeting. I just purchased my fishing license. I'm going to need it this weekend. I want access to it on my phone. What's a faster way to get this data into the Brain? So I just shared with you the basic creation of thoughts, notes, and adding files and attachments. So notice I can click on this document and it'll open up the PDF here in my content area for this file attachment. So let's start talking about all of these time-saving tips that we're highlighting today to get existing data into the Brain. So I'm going to start off by just closing my Lore Bloom Brain. So I don't have that tab open. I've got a different Brain open. We'll talk about this Brain in just a bit. And I'm even going to minimize that. And I'm going to start using a feature in the Brain called BrainBox. And BrainBox is a really, really great way for you to quickly add information into your Brain, whether it's a file, a document, a web page that you like. but it can then be cataloged at a later date or categorized at a later date. So here is the other portion of my fishing license. Actually, this is the receipt, and that's just the purchase confirmation. But regardless, I want to have both in my brain. I save everything. Anytime someone emails me, save this for your records, it typically goes right into my brain. So I'm going to right-click on this file and select Send to and BrainBox. Now, there's no further or additional steps that you need to take. When you install the Brain 11, you can, from any document, send that document into your BrainBox. Now, you should have your Brain open and be logged in. Without the login, when you try to send something to the BrainBox, it'll force you to log in, because whether you're sending it from a web page or an individual file, because the Brain application needs to know what account to associate this file with in the Brain database or the Brain license. So I've logged into the Brain, but again, I don't have the correct Brain open and the application is minimized. So I simply select Send to BrainBox. And I've got another file here. This is the latest Skype installer. With everyone at the Brain working remotely and all of our clients working remotely as well, I've been doing a lot of Skype calls, whether a person has, GoToMeeting or whatever the case may be. Skype is a pretty common tool. And so I'm Skyping customers, clients, colleagues, friends, and family. So therefore, I want to add this installer into my Brain. So if any of my clients don't have it, or colleagues that I work with don't have the latest version, I can easily get this to them, and I'll find it again very easily in the future by storing this. In this case, it's an exe, a file in my Brain. So I simply right-click, and once again, I'm going to select Send to BrainBox. So I've sent a PDF, an exe. I can send Word documents, spreadsheets into my BrainBox very easily. This is the process on a Windows machine. Now, from a Mac, you would see the Brain icon. Now, it's difficult for me to jump back and forth between Mac and a Windows machine on a webinar. So just imagine, if you will, that I'm on a Mac. You would see in your dock, I believe is the technical term, for the toolbar at the bottom where all of your current apps are, and you would see the Brain icon. You would simply drag and drop, hover over that icon and release, and you've added a file into your BrainBox. But I'm not done quite yet with BrainBox. I've added 2 individual files, my exe, my PDF. Let's add some web content into the Brain as well. So I'm going to open up my web browser, and I've got some existing web pages that I've found. I don't have my Brain open. Even if I did have the correct Brain open, I'm probably in the wrong area. Remember, I'm on that weekend, my weekend checklist, or I'm on my thought for another project that I'm working on. This is all about bread baking. I love the recipes that I'm finding on this website. I have the BrainBox extension installed on my Chrome browser. Now, you can go to www.thebrain.com/BrainBox and see all the instructions for installing the BrainBox on Safari. I've got Google Chrome. You can install it on Firefox. And we're in development adding additional browser capabilities. But there are several different very popular browsers, and the instructions for installing the extension, you could also just go to the Chrome extension page, do a search for BrainBox, and find it that way. But the instructions for installing your extension for your favorite browser are there for you. And when I find, once again, a web page that I like, I can click on that button. And notice, hopefully that showed up. It went by really quickly. It said adding to BrainBox added. And once again, done. I've added that to the BrainBox. I'm going to add a few different things. I'm taking my time browsing around. This is a new iPhone case that I'm interested in getting. I'm going to purchase. Don't have time to read all the reviews. There's 2,000 reviews, but I'm really going to read this to see if it stands up to this shock-proof protective case. Later, I click on the BrainBox icon, and I'm just going to grab one more, something completely different. Here's for an upcoming family vacation to Madeline Islands that my kids are taking with me, and I'm going to click Add to BrainBox. So 3 different web pages I've added very quickly, all from the same browser. I like to use Google Chrome, but I could be adding, and I often do, from other locations. In fact, I'm going to in just a bit from Safari, but not on my desktop. So I've added web pages from my desktop. I have added documents from my desktop. Now it's time to share another feature with you. And that is going to be happening on my phone. So I've got this handy little app here. And forgive me, it just takes a moment to share this, my phone, on my screen. So what I'm doing is I'm running this phone, and it's actually going to mirror everything that shows up on my phone. There's my wallpaper. So you can see this is, you're seeing on the screen what I'm seeing on my phone. And I've got my app for the brain. And it opened up to a thought, Apostle Islands. That's where I'm going camping with my family in a couple of weeks. But regardless, everything that goes into my brain is available to me right here on my phone. So I can click on any one of these thoughts. I probably have confirmation numbers, checklists. Here's my backup plan in case camping didn't work out because of everything that's going on with COVID these days. I've got other activities that we could do for a staycation from our house. So regardless, anything going to my brain is available to me right here on my iPhone. And I can continue adding on and building in my brain from my mobile device as well. And I'm going to share a brain with you a little bit later today, probably after Jay does his demo. I'll be sharing with you another brain that we recently put together as a team at TheBrain Technologies. Most of it, almost all of it, I'd say 90% of it done from our mobile devices. So we had some, I don't want to say we had fun because it's a very serious topic, but we all decided to contribute, and a lot of that contribution came after hours, and we're on our mobile devices, our iPads, our phones, and adding information. So as you can see, I can click on the little plus tab at the bottom and add a new thought. So Apostle Island pizza shops. So I type in pizza shops. I have the option to make this a jump, a parent, as you can see at the top, jump parent or child. So I leave child selected and I tap on create. And now all of my Apostle Islands pizza shops, there's a little town on one of the Apostle Islands where you can go in for food to little restaurants and ice cream. I'll keep track of this all on my phone. And I'll have my phone with me on vacation so I can quickly look up all of the data that I've created ahead of time. So regardless, you can easily and quickly add information on your phone. There is a little paper clip, and that allows me to access any file attachments. And the pencil allows me, you can see there's my sort of camping checklist that I'm just starting to put together. It's taking shape on that thought as well. And those are with the icons at the bottom. So I can see the blue highlighted paper clip, and the little pencil with the paper is a note. And here, of course, is BrainBox. I'm not going to open my BrainBox yet. I am going to send more information into my BrainBox now from my mobile device. So I'm opening up my web browser, and I'll just go through my browsing history. I don't mind. This is all about the differences between MIG welding and TIG welding. Might not interest you. It interests me. There's a great video on basics for MIG welding down below. So if that's of interest to me. This is a really long article. I don't have time to read this all right now. But the odds of me finding this again in the future, look at this URL, Miller Welds, resources, articles, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's not going to happen. I'll never remember that URL. I want to save this for later, and I'm going to save it in my brain. So I'm going to tap at the very bottom the share icon. I have the brain installed on my iOS device. And therefore, if I scroll down all the different options that I have to share, there it is, BrainBox. So I tap on Add to BrainBox, and my MIG welding versus TIG welding, this is actually MIG welding basics. Very, very helpful for me, and that's been saved in my BrainBox. I'll grab one more. So let's just go into my browsing history. Here we're looking at just camping pads, updating or upgrading our family camping pads once again for my, now back to my camping trip. And looks like a good price. I like it. I might purchase this later after I talk to my wife. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to send it into my BrainBox. So tap on share and scroll down, add to BrainBox. There we go. So now let's stay on the phone since we're here. I'm going to open up the Brain. And under my backup plan, Apostle Islands, my receipt for my camping registration, I guess I'll just put it here under Apostle Islands. I'm going to create a new thought, Apostle Islands purchases. So things that I need to purchase, I'll go ahead and create a new thought for purchases under Apostle Islands. And adding to this thought, I'm going to add those camping pads that I saw. So I'm going to tap on the BrainBox. Now, when you tap on BrainBox, you've got a list of all the different items that you recently added or have added. So all of these items, it's documents, it's files, it's web pages. They don't have a home yet in my brain. I remember I was sort of stockpiling, storing them for later, then deciding what I'm going to do with it. Well, here I am at the thought on my iPhone. There it is at the very top, the Alps Mountaineering Foldable Foam Sleeping Pad. So now when I tap on that on my phone, I can preview it just to make sure in case there's a whole bunch of foam sleeping pads I added to my BrainBox. I can attach it to the purchases thought or create a child. I want to create a child underneath, so I'm going to tap that option. And now it has been removed from my BrainBox because it has found a home in the correct brain. And there under purchases, there's my link. I can tap on that. I'm going to tap on the paperclip icon and open this file. So I'll review that with my family. Does it look like this was one we want to purchase, yes or no? And move on from there. So very, very easy to not only add information into your BrainBox from your mobile device, but also to then capture it and categorize it. So it's sort of a two-step process. I'm sending things into my BrainBox, and then at a later date, I'm capturing that information and retrieving it and finding the proper home for it. If I just review my BrainBox, let's say I've got some extra time, there's that Perfect Loaf website. So in my brain on my phone, I'm going to navigate to my bread area. So I just type in bread. We'll go to that area. You can see this is where I'm keeping track of different sourdough recipes and supplies. So bread research, I'm going to create a new thought. And for this one, I'll say research is a commonly used thought name for me. So I'll say comma research. And I'll create that. So by adding that comma, it actually grabbed the parent thought, bread, and my thought name is bread, comma, research. So when I do a search for research in my brain, you'll see in there's furniture, building, woodworking research, canoe research, camping research. Here's my bread research. And to this thought, I want to add the child thought of that website, the Perfect Loaf. I can preview it. So I click on preview and just make sure, oh yeah, this is the place where I saw all those sourdough bagels. I really like it. So back in BrainBox, I am going to add it as a child thought underneath my bread research. So in my brain, I've got that as has found a new home under my bread research. So let's go ahead now and jump out of my phone. I'm just going to stop sharing, stop mirroring, so you'll see my phone go away. And let's come back to the desktop. Back on the desktop, I am going to launch the same brain. So I've got my brain, and I'm going to go to my brains list, and I'm going to launch my Laura Bloom brain. This, once again, is just my own personal brain that I use for all my own hobbies and interests. Obviously, I'm going to thoughts today about welding and fishing and bread making, so just some areas of interest for me. But regardless, remember earlier that I added that information under bread. So I'm going to go to my bread thought. Actually, I've got to shortcut my 75% hydration bread recipe. And now underneath bread, I've got my bread research. Created this information on my phone, and here I am on the desktop, and anything that went into my phone stays in sync. I keep this information in sync from the desktop to the cloud and thus to my mobile device. And so there is that perfect loaf website that I can refer back to. Let's go ahead and review some of the information that I had sent into BrainBox. So I'm going to click on the BrainBox icon. And once again, it's just a nice long list that I can preview. So if I want to, let's go down to an image. Here's an image. I added this quite a while ago, and I've forgotten what it is. So right from the Brain desktop application, I can click to open this attachment. It's going to open in its native application, so I get an image. This is for the shape of a paddle that I'm building out of wood. I enjoy woodworking. So that is a canoe paddle, racing paddle. And if I know exactly where I want to put that, I've got a thought in my brain called, I believe it's called, there it is, racing paddle. So flat water canoe paddles, there I have an image of it, but if I don't know where I purchased it, there I took a wider screenshot, as you can see in BrainBox. I want to add this as a child thought. So I can simply add that content in, and that will become a child thought of my racing paddle. Or there, I added it onto the actual zoomable icon. So this is great because in this screenshot, obviously I took this in my notes from my phone, and I also captured the measured dimensions of the paddle. So that's even more helpful than just seeing plain old image there in the notes of the paddle itself. So let's go back to BrainBox, and I just want to add a couple of more things. I'll skip over the welding for now. I'll organize some of this later. There's that Skype executable that I dropped in earlier. That particular file, that executable, I need it. However, it doesn't even belong in this, not only this area of the brain, but specifically it doesn't belong in this brain. I keep another brain called My Cortex. And My Cortex are pieces of information, tools, and resources that I need in order to do my job. So this is a brain that I don't demo often. If you've ever joined me for a Brain 101 call, or actually any of my other demos, I've never demoed this brain just because I keep a lot of highly confidential information in this brain. So I'm going to be very careful about what I click on. But here you can see is a thought simply called tools. I've got a really goofy background in the background, but I like it. But these are all the different applications and tools that I need for my job. And I've got a subcategory, internal tools. So tools that I use to communicate with other colleagues at the Brain Technologies. And notice many of these tools have little icons signifying I've got a note. So whether it's Slack or HipChat or Gmail, I've got a note there, which is typically my login information or how my password, how I access the application, or more details that I need about licensing, how many seats I've purchased, when they're going to expire, etc. So here under Skype, and I did preview this earlier so I wouldn't accidentally click on something that I shouldn't. My account information for my Skype account is down below. And I've got some other details here on a rich text format document. But I want this executable for Skype. I've been sharing this recently with other colleagues. And to be honest, it can be hard to find online, which is the right Skype installer for my device, for my phone, for the desktop, or what have you. So I found this Skype executable. This is the one that we're all using. And in case someone comes on board that wants to communicate via Skype and they want this file, I can drag and drop the file right out of the brain and into an email or send it over our network. And I'm going to drop that file right here as a child thought underneath Skype. So I click on the brain icon. There's that Skype. I want to add this not as an attachment to the active thought, but as a child underneath it. And just say, okay, take a moment. And this will be added then as, there it is. It's been removed from my BrainBox, and now I have this file easily discoverable from the brain, and maybe I'll even go into the notes. This is the file that the team. Thank you, spell check, installed on, and I'm going to add the current date and time. So once again, it's browsing through a bunch of data that I had recently gathered. There's that Skype file that I'm going to need. I added it into the BrainBox, and when I had time at a later date, I was easily able to add that information into the correct place in the correct brain. And that's sort of the key that I'm trying to get across is at a later date, you can very, very easily add information into your brain that you've collected, stored in your BrainBox, and you're organizing that at a later date. Now, there's one more feature that I want to share with you, and it harkens back to what we saw earlier, the drag and drop web pages. Very, very easy to just simply drag and drop web pages into the brain. When we find a web page we like, we don't have the brain open, what do? We can add it through BrainBox. I've demoed that with you. Quite often I'm doing a search and I look at all these different search results, and the way I do research, from time to time, I see information that will grab my attention by the title, but I don't have time to actually click and review, is this what I want, yes or no? So quite often I just want to capture the Google search results or Bing search results to review that data at a later time. Or I see exactly what I like. I know from the title, this is what I'm looking for. How about if we didn't have to open the page first and then send it into the brain? We could simply send it into the brain directly from the search results. You can certainly do that. Many people don't realize that with the brain. I'm going to go back to, I'll just go back to my bread area. And let's say I'm doing some more bread research. I do a lot of bread research, so I'm glad that I have this thought now. And making bread, you can see up here, I've got my 75% hydration. I've got other recipes that are, my variation is 60% or 70% rather than 75. I'm interested in finding an 80% hydration recipe. That might not make sense to you. It's okay. It doesn't matter. The point is I'm going to do some research. So I go to Bing. I like Bing. And I'm going to find an 80% hydration sourdough. 80% hydration sourdough. So there's that perfect loaf. That shows up even. So I can look through this information and find what I'm looking for. And maybe there's a web page, Weekend Baker. And I already know, I really like Weekend Baker. I've seen many of their recipes in the past. I'm going to check this out, but I don't have time now. It's a small little step, but it saves a lot of time to simply go into your brain. And here I am under the research area anyhow. So I've got my brain open where I'm on the right thought, and my search results from the browser are easily accessible as well. So I can click and drag from the search results. You don't need to open the page first, then send it into the brain right from the search results. I like that Weekend Bakery, so I'm going to drag and drop it into the brain. And of course, now I've captured that information, and that web page is going to load up right there in my content window. So many different ways to send data into the brain and many different ways to expedite that process. So I've shared with you a lot about the BrainBox. I hope you'll find the BrainBox useful in the future, and even a couple of tips regarding drag and drop. And now I'd like to send presenter over to Jay. Jay's got some really helpful tips on adding information into the brain while you're using the application and discovering information that you need, I believe is what Jay's topic is going to be on. So, Jay, if you don't mind, I'll pass presenter over to you.
So yeah, today I'm just going to be going over real quick how to quickly create thoughts, but not really like normal thoughts that you would be used to. I think a lot of people who use the brain, they actually don't know at all about orphan thoughts. And orphan thoughts can be useful in certain scenarios depending on what kind of project you're working on. This right here is a project that I'm working on right now, which is kind of a little bit of a passion project for me, you know, given all the things that's happening around the world right now. And we will actually be presenting this brain here, this Black Lives Matter brain, in a future webinar. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely do stay tuned for that. But here, so a few things that we can just kind of show off on how orphan thoughts are here. I mean, an orphan thought is exactly what it sounds like. You know, it's a thought with no relation. So no children, no parent, no jump thoughts. And there are a few ways to create them. And once you do create them, they are kind of hidden in the brain because everything in the brain is kind of connected to each other. So there are a few ways to kind of find them, right? So you can search for them. So first we'll go over creating an orphan thought, which here we actually have in this brain some inspirational leaders. So I don't think I have Barack Obama in there yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just create him as an orphan thought, and we can use that as an example. So, oh, I do have Barack Obama. Okay, let me try someone else then. Michelle Obama. Okay, looks like I might have a note in there for Michelle. So actually, this is pretty interesting. If we go into the Barack Obama thought here, I do have a note that says Michelle Obama's name. So this is another quick way that you can create an orphan thought. I was going to go over this one after, but we can kind of just do this one first here since I already have this here. So you highlight a note or any text in a note, and you can link it to a thought. You can link it to an existing thought, but if the thought is not already created in your brain, so you see here it says 0 matches, you can still hit enter on here, and you'll get a little prompt saying no thoughts was found. Would you like to create one? So this would create, this links that thought to the Obama thought because I have it in a note here. So my first example though would have created a orphan thought if you did it from here. So there are a few ways to kind of just quickly create a thought like that. That was one of them here in the note. But let's just go back to the home thought here. And let's see here. There was another example that I wanted to share here. So we also have in this brain TV shows and movies, you know, regarding Black history and some pretty important information there. I think one of the movies that I haven't put in there was Selma, which is a really good one. So here, if I type in Selma, it's not showing up anything in my brain because I don't have that thought. And I can click on this little lightning bolt here. So the lightning bolt will actually, as you can see there, it says create an orphan thought using the text in the search box, which is the main feature that you would use to create an orphan thought if you were to do that. Some of the reasons why I've found to create an orphan thought, you know, sometimes I might want to, I don't see a lot of people doing this, but I think it's pretty cool. You can just section your brain off into multiple different sections where everything is interconnected as it would be normally, but then you have a whole other section that's just not connected to that first part of your brain, if that makes sense. So, you know, you've been building this brain on for years and you want to kind of just start with a whole other section that's not connected to any of that. You can always start with an orphan thought, and then you can build onto that and kind of create a whole other tree in your brain. So for this though, this I want to connect to something that's already in my brain. So it is an orphan thought. Like I mentioned, if you were to create an orphan thought like this and you, let's say, forgot about it, you're kind of just browsing around in your brain, you won't really find it anywhere it's not, unless you pin it to the top here or it's part of your past thought list, because I just activated that. So you wouldn't really be able to find that anywhere. So a good way to, like with anything in the brain, you know, you can always search for it. You can find that there. Or you can run a report. So there are a couple ways to reach your report. You can really quickly reach the report section by clicking on this icon here, which will just toggle the report section for you. Or you can also reach it using the view menu option here. So you can go view report. And here, yep, so, and then you can just change this here to orphan. So this will actually filter, let's say, you know, now you kind of just want to see all the orphan thoughts in your brain. You don't necessarily know which ones they are, and you can't search for them. You can always kind of filter them out this way. And this will kind of show you any thoughts that are orphan thoughts. So you can activate that thought that way as well. And so from here, what I would want to do, I would actually want to add this to something that's already in my brain. So we can just do TV shows and movies. So yeah, as you can see, as I type it, it kind of gives me suggestions on thoughts that matches that. So that gives you a really quick way to just add an orphan thought to part of your already existing brain there, which makes it, you know, pretty quick and easy to do that pretty efficiently. So yeah, I mean, as far as orphan thoughts go, they, like I mentioned, they can be used for creating a new section in your brain. They can be used for, let's say, something that you don't necessarily use a lot in your brain, but that's useful, that you kind of just want to be in the back of your mind, and you can kind of keep that as an orphan thought, where essentially, and especially if you're sharing this brain with someone, if it's not necessarily a private thought that you want to keep, but it's not something that you want to be activated all the time and things like that. Most orphan thoughts, unless you do a reports filter, most of them, only the person who creates them would essentially know they even exist in the brain. So you can sort of kind of think about how you might be able to use that for ideas that you would, you know, normally keep in the back of your mind and things like that. So yeah, that's just a quick little, you know, neat little feature there with this lightning bolt icon here. You can create an orphan thought very quickly, and then you can also create thoughts and link them directly to each other by searching for, by linking to a thought that is of a certain text that you've typed in a note, and if that text doesn't exist, it will offer to create that thought for you as an orphan thought. So yeah, I think that was pretty much all that, Matt, you wanted me to cover on the orphan thoughts there.
In early development of the brain application, we sort of thought of that as a bit of a mistake to create an orphan thought. It wasn't supposed to be there, but we quickly learned that some people liked to have orphan thoughts. It was a way of sort of, here's some information on a topic, but I don't know what to do with it yet. I don't know where it goes. So now we've got not only BrainBox, where you can put files and documents, but you can create actual thoughts that way to be categorized and cataloged at a later date. And you can even use that. John Parkin, a good friend of the brain, wrote in the question panel. We're going to start merging into the question and answer session of the demo today. Asked about grouping together orphan thoughts. And you can use the feature Jay just shared with you, create that orphan thought, saying, you know, name a thoughts that don't have a home yet, and select from the report all of your orphan thoughts and drop them there into the brain, and connect that thoughts that don't have a home yet to another area of the brain, you know, research that needs to be done, work that needs to happen. I really quickly ran my orphan thought list in this brain, and I've got quite a few. I've got a lot of research to do in my brain to decide if I want to keep that thought there or not. Orphan thoughts can also be created by accident. So Jay shared with us how you can create one on purpose. You know, I can create a new thought down below and call it 100% hydration recipe. So 100% hydration recipe would mean a loaf is made of completely 100% water. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's impossible. So if I were to just right-click and unlink these two thoughts, 100% hydration away from recipe with 80%. I click on unlink. I have sort of unintentionally created an orphan thought. How am I going to find that 100% hydration recipe thought in my brain? Not by navigating, because it's not connected to anything. As Jay showed us, I can only go back and run a report to find it. So if I click in this brain to show me my orphan thought list, you can see this brain that I'm in actually has 3,000 thoughts, and I run my orphan thought list. I just cleaned it out a little bit right before while Jay was demoing, so I don't have that much appearing there now. But there it is, my 100% hydration. And from here, I can decide, well, I actually didn't need this. So therefore, I can remove all from the selection, add all to a selection to connect them, or I can start right-clicking on thoughts to forget or delete those thoughts and remove them from my brain. So a lot of options with those reports that you can do. And another question that came in, and Jay, then I'll send it over to you to see if we have any other further questions that you didn't get to that we want to cover today. People were asking specifically about deleting an orphan thought that you don't need. So I covered that really quickly. I'll slow down just for a moment. And I have not forgotten or deleted this thought. But if I right-click on 100% hydration and select to forget that particular thought, it's not permanently deleted within the brain. In other words, the thought is still there. It's just in a forgotten thought list. So I can go up to options and select, or view rather. No, it's under options. There it is, show forgotten thoughts. So show forgotten thoughts now the thoughts will display in the Plex if they're connected, or I can even run a report. So I can say, all right, show me a report of all of my forgotten thoughts. And these are thoughts that need to be researched and deleted. So there's my 100% hydration. You can see it's sort of grayed out. I can now right-click and delete that thought. So it is permanently deleted from my brain. So it's sort of like a safety net. The forgetting of a thought allows you to go back and review by running a report or turning on your forgotten thoughts, finding them, and then permanently deleting. So those are a little bit different. Don't get those two confused. Forgotten thoughts are on their way to being deleted. An orphan thought is just simply a thought that isn't connected to anything else in your brain. So that's the big difference between those two thoughts. And with that, I think Jay and I covered everything that we wanted to today, giving you some really, really great shortcuts on getting information quickly into your brain, remotely into your brain from your mobile devices, and taking a couple of nice shortcuts for quick information capture on the go. Jay, did we have any other questions that came in during the webinar that was something that you'd or someone would like us to demonstrate or display?
Yeah, so we did have a few questions here. Actually, one that just came in a few minutes ago that was pretty interesting was, how can you take an orphan thought and make it into its own brain? I don't know if we have a specific button to do that, but I think that can be done pretty easily. So if you can talk about that real quick, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So let's say I'm really onto something with this 100% hydration. It doesn't exist yet. So I found my niche market, 100%. Okay, so I recreated, I thought, oops, I connected it. It doesn't matter really whether it's connected or not. I'm going to go ahead and unlink it. So going along with the question, it is an orphan thought. So how do we make this our own brain? Now you can do this with a grouping of thoughts as well. That's done with the selection box. It's a much more advanced feature of the brain, not one we intended to cover today. But there are some video tutorials on our website on how to deal with multiple brains and multiple thoughts. And the process is really the same here. I'm simply going to right-click, and I'm going to copy this thought. So copy 100% hydration bread recipe is what I named this thought. Now, if I were to right-click on this and just simply open it in a new tab, it's still just the same brain, just this thought opened in a new tab. So that's a little bit different. I want to actually copy it. So now I've got that information on my clipboard. Sadly, I don't have a picture or any notes over to the right, but I'm simply going to click on File and create a new brain. And it's my 100 brain. Just call it 100. So this, I think, would be the fastest way to go about this process. Now, anytime you create a new brain, it selects one of your random wallpapers. I've got a lot of different wallpapers and different brain themes on different topics. Or this is sort of my futuristic 2020 wallpaper. I'll just make this the basic light blue. And I still have that thought captured on my clipboard. I can right-click and paste. So this is going to be the home for all of my science and research and how to make a 100% hydration bread recipe, which of course is the same thing as saying water. So not going to happen. Jay, any other questions then?
Yeah, another one that came in that was pretty interesting was if you could talk on like the difference between forgotten thoughts and orphan thoughts. I mean, they are different as in they're connected. One of them is connected still, but they kind of are both hidden in your brain.
Yes, that is correct. And so that's why I ended that that last little bit with a brief description of the differences between orphan and forgotten thoughts. So let's really break that down. Yes, Jay, that's a good point. Both are hidden. So right now, not right now, but right now, in my brain, both are almost inaccessible. Just clicking, navigating around through text. So into my research, my 80% hydration, the 100% there, it happens to be showing up in my past thought list right now. But regardless, just day-to-day navigation through the brain, I won't encounter any orphan thoughts by navigating through the Plex or any forgotten thoughts. The difference between the two are, once again, a orphan thought doesn't have any links. It's still what we call a native thought within the brain. It can have file attachments. It can have notes. It can have pictures, images, but it doesn't have any links to the main structure that's connected to my home thought of the brain. That is the key difference. It's simply not connected, whereas a forgotten thought is sort of like going into the recycle bin on your desktop. Like my recycle bin, as you can see, it's full right now. The next step is to right-click and empty out my recycle bin. Thoughts in the brain can have content that you don't like, so you forget. So we just sort of changed the terminology. I'm gonna leave 100% hydration alone, and I'll go into my report. I'm gonna open up my reports for my forgotten thoughts. So there's a little drop-down menu, so you can see all thoughts that have a particular type, all thoughts that are orphan, all thoughts that have specific attachments. So if I want to find all thoughts that have an internal attachment or a .doc file, and refresh. So I've got 45 thoughts that have a Word document in this particular brain. Really great things that you can do with the reports. Right now we're focusing on forgotten thoughts. So these are my forgotten thoughts. They're on their way to being deleted, and I can review this thought. This thought is called backseat. This is for a remodel of an old VW I did. I decided not to put a third row in my VW because that area is used for something else. And I thought it's just a crazy idea. So I forgot the thought, but I didn't delete it. I am absolutely not going to put a third row of seating in my VW bus. So now when I right-click, I have the option to either remember this thought or delete it. So now I'll permanently delete it. And that it takes me back to my most recently activated thought, which is bread research. But as you can see, even if I refresh, That backseat thought is no longer there. It's absolutely gone from my brain. So those are the key differences between forgotten and orphan thoughts. One is on its way to being deleted. The other one is simply not connected. That's what it is in a nutshell.
Great,
and
great.
with that, yeah, go ahead.
So there was one more thing, final that came through. So someone asked if you could think of using orphan thoughts in your brain essentially as like having multiple brains, but within one mega brain, which is something that I actually, mentioned briefly when I was doing the presentation. That's essentially what I actually do. And I like doing that better than, going back to the brains list page and opening a new brain. I think it's much easier to just know the main topics, and you can even pin them to the top of your mega brain. And just kind of know that each topic is its own sort of like separate, tree of data. You can essentially think about it that way, as using orphan thoughts to sort of create separate brains within the same mega brain, and that could definitely work. So finally, Matt, I just wanted to see if you can just briefly mention, the fact that we will have the webinar recorded and sent to everyone who registered, because that did come in a couple of times as well.
Absolutely. If we like I said at the very beginning of today's call, we jumped into this topic assuming that you probably know the basics behind getting started with the brain. Today's call was all about taking you one step further, tips and tricks to add data and information into your brain on the go, add that information quickly. If today went too fast for you, or you want to review your content, yes, there will be a recording available at some point during the day tomorrow. Everyone that joined the call or even signed up to be on the call will receive a link to that recording, and then there will be a link on our website. And again, if today's topic was a little over your head and you're just getting started with the brain, so how do I create a note? How do I add a file attachment? Join me for the Brain 101. There's a link on our website for the Brain 101. And we hold those classes almost every Friday. We take a few Fridays off during the summer here and there. But regardless, you could join our Brain 101 or review any of the tutorials available on our website. And also, I'll share with you, those of us at The Brain were really impressed with Jay's Black Lives Matter brain that he's putting together. And we're putting together a webinar on that topic specifically, and we'll be demoing that brain and sharing that brain with you in more detail in the future. So please look forward to that coming up sometime probably next month, a webinar focusing on that brain as Jake continues to develop it. So thank you everyone for joining me today. Again, there are more helpful resources on our website if you ever need to refer back to today's recording or any other topics. And we're always available at support@thebrain.com. We're happy to hear from you. Send us an email. We'll answer all your questions there as well. So thanks for joining us once again. Have a great rest of your week. And as always, enjoy your brain. Thanks, everyone.